Hey everyone, and welcome to our deep dive. We're going to be exploring some pretty fascinating excerpts from the Handbook of Psychology, Volume 7, Educational Psychology.
That's a really rich resource.
Oh yeah, for sure. So get ready for some surprising insights. This handbook, it doesn't just skim the surface.
No, it isn't.
It really dives deep into how we learn and how we can create those better learning environments, and even how societal values, shape our understanding of things like intelligence.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Right. Okay, so let's start there. Intelligence. This handbook dives right into how intelligence has been historically viewed, and I have to say I was kind of blown away by the idea that it's often used as like a tool to sort people within society.
Like a measuring stick almost.
Yeah, exactly. And it makes you wonder, right? Like, is intelligence something we're born with, or is it something that becomes important because we as a society decide it's important?
It's a really interesting question.
It really is. And the handbook presents these like two competing views that really got me thinking. There's the traditional view, which argues that tests like the GRE,
So standardized tests.
yeah, exactly. Those standardized tests, they are valid measures of cognitive ability. And to be fair, those scores often do correlate with success, at least.
In westernized society.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
It's very much tied to a particular context.
A particular framework.
Yeah, exactly.
But then you have this other view
Right.
that intelligence is more of a societal construct.
Uh-huh.
So the idea is that these test scores, they only gain importance because we use them, for things like tracking students in education or,
Yeah.
deciding who gets a certain job.
It's like we've decided they matter, so they do.
Exactly. And it's not necessarily that they're perfectly reflecting, some kind of inherent ability.
Right. So it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy in a way.
It really is.
Yeah. So are we putting too much emphasis on these tests, maybe even creating a system that's biased towards certain types of thinking?
That's a really important question to consider.
It is. And the handbook actually shares this story about how GRE scores can impact graduate school admissions.
Oh, yeah?
And because of measurement errors, some people might be excluded even if they have the potential to succeed. It's kind of a stark reminder
Yes.
that those tests aren't perfect.
Not at all.
And we need to be really cautious about the weight we give them.
I think that's a crucial takeaway.
Absolutely. It's a lot to consider, right? It makes you think about all the different ways that intelligence could be expressed and whether our current systems are really recognizing that.
Right? Are we capturing the full spectrum of what intelligence could be?
Yeah, and what stands out to you about these different views on intelligence?
I think what's so fascinating is how these views challenge our assumptions about what it means to be intelligent.
Mm-hmm.
Are we valuing diverse forms of intelligence? Or are we sort of limiting ourselves to a very narrow definition?
That's such a great point. It's like we need to expand our understanding of intelligence beyond what can be measured on a test. Now let's switch gears a bit and talk about literacy. I was really intrigued by this idea of emergent literacy that the handbook really emphasizes.
It's a really interesting concept.
It is. It's a significant shift from that traditional view of children as like passive recipients of knowledge. Emergent literacy sees them as like actively constructing their literacy skills from a very young age.
Like little explorers figuring out how language works.
Exactly. It's almost like there are these little scientists experimenting with language and, like figuring out how it all works. And the handbook really highlights how crucial those early interactions with adults are for developing, those reading and writing skills.
Those foundational skills.
Yeah, exactly. Like think about it, bedtime stories, those playful rhymes,
Right.
the way parents point out letters and words in like everyday life.
It all adds up.
It all adds up. It's incredible.
That's like building blocks.
Yeah, and it makes those seemingly simple interactions so much more meaningful, right? It's like those shared reading experiences. They're not just about bonding.
Right.
They're literally shaping young brains.
Exactly. And the handbook points out that phonemic awareness, that understanding that words are made up of individual sounds, that's really foundational for learning to read.
So it's not just about recognizing letters.
No,
It's about hearing those sounds and like how they fit together.
It's about decoding the sounds that make up words.
Yeah, and it makes you realize how much is going on in those little minds as they're learning to read.
Absolutely. And this research on emergent literacy, it's had a huge impact on teaching methods,
Oh, yeah, for sure.
leading to things like the whole language approach,
Yeah.
which focuses on, meaning and context.
So instead of just like drilling phonics rules,
Right.
it's about immersing kids in language and
Yeah.
helping them discover the joy of reading.
Exactly, making it fun and engaging.
Yeah, and I love that. But of course, there are always these ongoing debates in any field, right? Of course. And the handbook mentions some discussions about, whether this research on emergent literacy applies across different cultures.
Yeah, that's a big question.
It is a big question, yeah. And like the influence of cultural background on literacy development and the connection between oral language learning and literacy.
Oh, how those pieces fit together.
Yeah, and it makes you think about your own earliest literacy memories, right? Like what were those experiences that maybe sparked your love of reading? Or maybe even made it a challenge for you? How did the adults in your life shape your journey with words?
It's amazing how those early experiences can have such a lasting impact on our relationship with literacy.
It really is. And speaking of shifts in how we think about learning, the handbook also takes us on this journey through the digital learning revolution.
Oh, yeah.
We've come a long way from those early days of drill and practice software based on behaviorist theories.
Right.
Now we're seeing AI and information processing models influencing the design of educational software.
It's really remarkable how far we've come.
It is. It's been quite a ride. What I find so fascinating is how our understanding of the computer's role in education has really evolved.
Oh, absolutely.
It's gone from being this simple source of information or a tool for delivering curriculum to something so much more dynamic and engaging.
It's no longer just a static tool.
No, not at all.
It's become an interactive partner in learning.
Yeah, exactly. The computer has become like a medium for communication, a cognitive tool for exploring ideas, and even an alternative learning environment in some cases.
It's really expanded the possibilities for how we learn.
Absolutely. And some even see it as a potential learning partner, collaborating with students in really innovative ways.
Right. It's not just about replacing teachers, but about augmenting their abilities and providing students with more personalized learning experiences.
Exactly. And then there's this idea of perspectivity technologies that the handbook introduces. It's about how computers allow us to construct knowledge in these flexible ways and explore multiple viewpoints.
Like breaking free from the limitations of a traditional textbook.
Yeah.
And having the power to delve into a topic from different angles.
That's so cool. It's like instead of just having one perspective, you can have multiple perspectives.
And you can construct your own understanding based on those multiple viewpoints.
It's like giving learners agency.
Exactly, empowering them to be active participants in their own learning.
Yeah, and I love that. And the handbook makes this really important point that it's about moving beyond this purely instrumental view of technology. Digital literacy isn't just about knowing how to use a computer.
Right.
It's about understanding that broader impact that technology has on how we interact with the world and how we learn.
It's about being critical thinkers and discerning consumers of information in this digital age.
Yeah, so in this digital age, what does it really mean to be digitally literate? How do you use technology to learn and explore?
It's a question we all need to be asking ourselves. For me, it's about being a critical consumer of information, using technology to connect with others, and constantly expanding my digital horizons.
That's great. It's like technology can be this tool that amplifies our learning if we use it wisely.
Absolutely.
Now let's turn our attention to, I think, the unsung heroes of the educational world, school psychologists.
Absolutely. They play such a vital role.
They really do. And the handbook sheds light on the crucial role that they play in supporting children's, educational needs, behavioral needs, and mental health needs.
They wear so many hats.
They do. They really do. And they work tirelessly to make sure that everything is, aligned with legal requirements and to advocate for students who need that extra support.
And they're constantly adapting their practices to meet the changing needs of students.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It's incredible how much they've adapted their practices over the past century. And the handbook touches on how those societal events and trends have directly impacted their work.
They're on the front lines.
They are. They really are. And they face some serious challenges, too.
Oh, absolutely.
The handbook points out that the current focus on special education evaluations can really limit their time for other, crucial tasks.
It's like they're being pulled in so many directions.
Yeah, it's like they want to provide those preventative mental health services, offer those problem-solving consultations.
Right.
But there are just not enough hours in the day.
It's a constant juggling act.
Yeah, it really is. And then there's the challenge of, demonstrating the effectiveness of their services through those evidence-based interventions.
Which is so important.
It is.
For any field, really.
Yeah, for any field. Yeah, for sure.
But it's a high bar to meet.
It is. And then plus there's, the often overlooked mental health needs of the students themselves.
Right, addressing those underlying issues.
Yeah, it's a lot to juggle. What are your thoughts on the challenges that school psychologists face? And, how can we better advocate for their diverse roles?
I think we need to recognize that their work is about so much more than just assessments and evaluations. It's about supporting the well-being and success of every student. And giving them the resources and support they need to do that effectively is crucial.
It's like they're the guardians of students' mental and emotional well-being within that school system.
Yeah, I like that analogy.
Yeah, and speaking of supporting students' well-being, let's move on to another fascinating concept, self-regulation.
Yeah, this is something we can all benefit from.
Oh, for sure, no matter what our age or profession is right.
Absolutely.
And the handbook defines self-regulation as that ability to manage one's own learning process.
It's like being the CEO of your own learning.
I love that. It involves things like setting goals, using strategies effectively, monitoring your progress and reflecting on, how you're doing.
It's about taking ownership of the process.
Yeah, exactly. And the handbook really emphasizes how much our beliefs about ourselves.
Right.
Our self-efficacy can impact our motivation and achievement.
Those beliefs can be so powerful.
They really can. It's fascinating how those beliefs about our abilities really shape our learning journey. If we believe we can succeed, we're more likely to put in the effort and actually achieve those goals.
Our mindset plays a huge role.
It does. It really does. And feedback plays a huge role in shaping those beliefs too, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Like positive feedback can boost our confidence, while negative feedback can, make us doubt ourselves.
It's about finding that balance between challenge and support.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And the handbook shares this really interesting study where children were taught to talk themselves through their strategies during math practice.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Like verbalizing their thought process.
Yeah. And they call it, the self-verbalization technique. And it actually helped them to guide their learning and to stay on track.
That's fascinating.
It is. It's so cool. It's like you're giving yourself this pep talk while you learn.
I love that. It's like having an inner coach.
Yeah, exactly. And it highlights the power of metacognition, being aware of our own thinking processes and how that can help us become more effective learners.
Metacognition is so crucial for self-regulated learning.
It really is. So metacognition is like understanding how we learn best, right? But I'm a little fuzzy on how that's different from self-regulation.
Okay, yeah, it's a subtle but important distinction.
Okay.
So metacognition is primarily about awareness of our thinking processes. So knowing what strategies work for you, understanding your strengths and weaknesses as a learner.
Okay.
Self-regulation goes beyond that by incorporating those motivational and behavioral aspects, like your self-efficacy and that sense of agency over your actions.
So it's not just about knowing how you think, but it's about using that knowledge to take charge of your learning.
Exactly.
And making those choices that lead to success.
It's about being proactive and intentional in our learning rather than just letting things happen to us.
I love that. Think about your own learning experiences, How do your beliefs about yourself as a learner impact your success?
It's a great question. I've found that when I believe in my ability to learn something new, I'm much more likely to persevere even when things get tough. And conversely, when I doubt myself, it's easy to give up or not even try in the first place.
It's like those beliefs can become these self-fulfilling prophecies.
You really can.
And speaking of motivation, the handbook delves into how our values, our goals, our sense of control, can all influence our motivation to learn.
It's not just about ability or intelligence.
Right.
It's about the whole package.
Yeah, so it's not just about being smart or having those good study habits. It's also about what we value and how much control we feel we have over our own learning.
Exactly. And the handbook highlights that students with an internal locus of control, meaning they believe that they have influence over their learning, they tend to achieve more.
It's about feeling empowered.
Exactly.
And in control of your own learning destiny.
It's about being the driver of your own learning journey.
Yeah, that reminds me of that self-determination theory we talked about earlier, Feeling autonomous and in charge of your own actions is such a powerful motivator.
It really is.
But motivation isn't just about control, right?
No, it's not.
It's also about valuing what you're learning. Like students who find their schoolwork, important, interesting, or useful, they're more likely to be engaged.
Because they see the value in it.
Exactly. And the handbook even points out that those value beliefs can influence, the courses students choose.
Oh, yeah.
So, if a student sees math as valuable, they're more likely to take those higher-level math classes.
Makes sense.
Right. What motivates you to learn?
That's a great question. For me, it's about curiosity and the joy of discovery. I'm drawn to those topics that spark my interest and make me want to learn more.
I love that. And it makes learning so much more meaningful when it's tied to something you're passionate about.
Absolutely. It becomes a journey of exploration.
Yeah. Now let's dive into the work of a psychologist who's had, I think a really profound impact on our understanding of learning. Lev Vygotsky.
Vygotsky, yes. His sociocultural theory really changed the game.
Oh, it did. His sociocultural theory emphasizes that role of social interaction
Right.
and cultural tools in shaping how we learn and develop. It's this powerful reminder that learning isn't just this solitary endeavor.
We learn through interaction and collaboration.
Yeah, and his theory really challenges that traditional idea that, learning is solely an individual process.
Right. It's not just happening in isolation.
Yeah.
It's happening in a social context.
Yeah, and Vygotsky argued that we learn through collaboration and dialogue,
Right.
and we gradually internalize those shared experiences. So it's like we're building knowledge together.
Building on each other's ideas.
Yeah, through those interactions with others. And language plays a key role in that process, right?
Oh, absolutely. Language is the tool that mediates our social interactions.
Yeah.
And helps us to internalize new knowledge.
And Vygotsky was fascinated by, how language develops, particularly, the emergence of inner speech as this tool for thinking. It's like having this internal dialogue that helps us, guide our actions and solve problems.
It's like talking to yourself, but in a productive way.
Right, exactly. It's not just, random thoughts bouncing around in your head. It's purposeful.
It's a way of making sense of the world and planning our actions.
Yeah, and it makes you realize how much of our thinking is actually influenced by our social interactions and that language we use. The Handbook actually provides this great example of how Vygotsky's ideas can be applied to writing instruction.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. It cautions against focusing too much on, grammatical correctness early on because it can hinder, that creative flow of ideas.
So it's about prioritizing fluency and expression over perfection.
Yeah, sometimes we get so caught up in the mechanics of writing
Right.
that we forget about that joy of expressing ourselves.
Exactly. It's about finding that balance.
Yeah, so it's a good reminder that learning is about exploration and experimentation, not just about, getting everything perfect from the start.
It's about embracing the process of learning.
Yeah, and allowing ourselves to make mistakes along the way.
Mistakes are opportunities for growth.
Exactly. Think about your own learning experiences, How have social interactions and cultural influences shaped your learning journey? What tools and resources have been most helpful to you?
I've learned so much from mentors, from peers, and just from being exposed to different cultures and perspectives. It's those shared experiences and those diverse viewpoints that really enrich the learning process.
Absolutely. It's like learning becomes this collaborative endeavor.
Exactly.
And speaking of enriching learning experiences, the Handbook also explores the art of teaching
Yes.
and what makes a classroom truly engaging.
It's about creating those magical learning spaces.
Yeah, and this is where we move from theory to practice, right?
Right.
We see how all these ideas can be applied to create those dynamic learning environments.
Putting it all together.
Yeah. The Handbook stresses that, excellent teachers, they go beyond those simplistic models or those one-size-fits-all approaches. They create these complex and motivating environments that cater to those different learning styles and needs.
They're like master chefs blending all these different ingredients to create a delicious learning experience.
I love that analogy. So they use a variety of instructional approaches and resources. They encourage active thinking. They connect new ideas to students' prior learning.
It's about making those connections.
Yeah, and it's about creating that sweet spot where students are challenged, but not overwhelmed.
Finding that zone of proximal development.
Exactly.
Where learning is both challenging and achievable.
Yeah, and it's not just about delivering information, right?
No.
Excellent teachers, they model and encourage that active thinking. They provide support when students struggle. They build positive relationships with their students.
They're facilitators of learning, guiding students on their journey of discovery.
Yeah, they're like those mentors and guides along the way.
Exactly.
And engaging parents in the learning process is another important aspect of, creating that supportive learning environment.
It takes a village.
It does. It really does. What qualities make a teacher truly excellent in your experience?
For me, it's those teachers who are passionate about their subject and who can convey that enthusiasm to their students. They make learning fun and engaging, and they create a space where it's okay to take risks and to make mistakes.
It's about fostering that love of learning.
Exactly.
Rather than, that fear of failure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And speaking of learning together, let's talk about cooperative learning.
Oh, I love cooperative learning.
It's such a great approach.
It is.
Because it emphasizes that teamwork and that collaboration. And the Handbook highlights just how powerful it can be, for boosting academic achievement, improving social skills, increasing student motivation.
And it just makes learning more fun.
It does. It really does. The research on cooperative learning is actually pretty impressive.
It is. There's a lot of evidence to support its effectiveness.
And the handbook even cites a study where it led to these significant gains in reading comprehension. So that shows its potential, across different subject areas.
Right, it's not limited to one specific subject.
No, not at all. But the handbook does emphasize that, cooperative learning activities, they need to be structured carefully to be effective.
It's not just about throwing students together in groups and hoping for the best.
No, there needs to be that clear purpose, individual accountability, and that sense of positive interdependence among those group members. It's about, creating that situation where everyone benefits from working together.
Where the sum is greater than its parts.
Exactly. Have you ever experienced the power of cooperative learning firsthand?
Oh, absolutely. I've found that collaborating with others can lead to a deeper understanding and more creative solutions. It's about leveraging the diverse strengths and perspectives of the group to achieve something that you couldn't do on your own.
It's like that saying, 2 heads are better than 1.
Exactly.
And speaking of impactful relationships, the handbook also highlights, the importance of those positive child-teacher relationships.
Those relationships are the foundation
They are.
of a successful learning experience.
They are. Research shows that those relationships, characterized by warmth, closeness, and open communication, they really benefit students' academic and social-emotional outcomes.
They create a sense of safety and belonging.
Yeah, it's like those teachers become those mentors and guides, not just instructors.
They're invested in the whole child.
Yeah, they create that safe space where students, feel comfortable asking questions, taking risks, and just being themselves.
It's about nurturing the whole child.
Yeah. And on the flip side, those negative or conflictual relationships, they can have these detrimental effects.
Oh, absolutely.
Especially for boys.
Yeah, the research shows that boys are particularly vulnerable to the negative effects of those conflictual relationships.
It's a reminder that that emotional climate of the classroom, it can have this profound impact.
It sets the stage for learning.
Yeah, and the handbook explains that, those relationships, they act as like this developmental resource for children. They learn from those interactions and that emotional support that they receive from those caring adults.
It's like a springboard for growth.
Yeah, and teachers can provide, guidance, structure, and just the right amount of autonomy to really foster that motivation and that engagement.
It's a delicate balance.
It is. It really is. Think about your own relationships with teachers throughout your education. How did those relationships, shape your experiences and your overall sense of well-being?
I was fortunate to have some truly amazing teachers who believed in me, who challenged me, and who created a love of learning that I carry with me to this day. Those relationships were transformative.
It's incredible how those positive relationships can have such a ripple effect.
They really do.
Throughout our lives. And speaking of creating those supportive and inclusive learning environments, let's turn our attention to gender equity in the classroom.
This is such an important topic.
It is, and it's something that, we need to be talking about more and more, especially as we strive to create these educational systems that empower all students, regardless of gender.
Equity is paramount.
Yeah, and the handbook acknowledges that female and male students, they often receive these different messages about, appropriate classroom behavior.
Oh, absolutely. There are these unspoken expectations and norms that can really shape students' experiences.
Yeah, and sadly, research has shown that those traditional classroom dynamics can sometimes favor boys, which can lead to girls, feeling less confident or less likely to speak up.
Yeah, they might internalize the message that their voices aren't as valued.
And that's so damaging.
It is.
It really is. But the good news is that the handbook highlights some successful interventions that can help to promote gender equity.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. So, for example, creating those classrooms that are emotionally safe, where both girls and boys feel comfortable, taking risks and making mistakes, that's crucial.
It's about fostering a growth mindset where everyone feels supported to learn and grow.
I love that. And what about those subject areas where we see the most gender disparity, like science and math? What can we do to level the playing field there?
The handbook suggests some interesting strategies, like using research articles written by women in science classes. providing those female mentoring opportunities, and even assigning single-sex lab groups in those co-educational settings.
It's fascinating how those seemingly small changes can have a huge impact on challenging those traditional gender roles.
It's about sending a clear message that girls belong in these fields just as much as boys do.
Yeah, and that their contributions are valued.
Absolutely, representation matters.
It does. It really does. Thinking back to your own classroom experiences, did you ever observe or experience, any instances of gender bias?
Honestly, yeah, I can recall times when girls' voices were unintentionally silenced or their ideas weren't given the same weight as boys' ideas. It's a reminder that we need to be constantly vigilant and proactive in challenging these biases, even when they're subtle.
Yeah, it's about creating that culture of awareness.
Absolutely.
And making sure all students feel seen and heard.
And valued for their unique contribution.
Exactly. Now let's move on to a topic that's often seen as just fun and games. Music and movement.
Oh, I love this topic.
It's so important. But the handbook, it emphasizes that crucial role that it plays in early childhood education.
Right. It goes far beyond just entertainment.
It does.
Music and movement can actually enhance cognitive, social, emotional, and even physical development in young children.
Yeah, it's like they're learning through play.
Exactly.
Developing those essential skills without even realizing it.
Right. It's a natural and joyful way to learn.
And the handbook even dives into some fascinating findings about children's musical development. Did you know that, diatonic stepwise musical patterns are easier for young children to sing than those arpeggiated patterns?
It's because those stepwise patterns with those gradual changes in pitch,
Yeah.
they're just easier for those young vocal cords to handle.
Oh, that makes sense.
They're like stepping stones to developing more complex musical skills later on.
Yeah, and when it comes to movement, the handbook really stresses that importance of free exploration and experimentation. It's not about forcing kids to coordinate with a steady beat right away. It's about letting them move their bodies in ways that feel natural and enjoyable.
It's about giving them that space to explore rhythm and movement at their own pace.
Yeah, to foster that innate love of music and dance. What are your earliest memories of music and movement? How did those experiences shape your perception of music?
Oh, I have such vivid memories of dancing around the living room with my family. Music was always a part of our lives. It was a way to connect, to express ourselves, to just have fun. Those early experiences really instilled in me a love of music that I still have today.
It's amazing how those early experiences can have such a lasting impact.
They really do shape our relationship with music and movement.
Yeah. Now let's talk about giftedness, a topic that often, sparks a lot of discussion.
It's a complex and often misunderstood topic.
It is. And the handbook really emphasizes that giftedness in early childhood, it can manifest in so many diverse ways. It's not just about, being a whiz kid academically. Right. It could be expressed through, creativity, leadership, artistic talent, or even just this deep passion for a particular subject.
It's about recognizing that potential in all its forms.
And the handbook points out that there are these multiple pathways
Right.
and demonstrations of giftedness in any domain. So it's not like this one-size-fits-all concept.
It's about seeing the individual child and their unique strengths.
Yeah, so how do we even begin to define giftedness?
That's the million-dollar question.
Right. And the handbook, it highlights several different perspectives. Some focus on that developmental advancement in one or more areas,
Right.
while others emphasize that complex use of cognitive abilities.
It's about looking beyond just IQ scores
Yeah, exactly.
and seeing the whole picture of the child's abilities.
And it's about recognizing that, giftedness isn't just about academic achievement. It can be expressed through so many different avenues.
Absolutely.
The handbook actually shares a compelling example of a young gifted child with this unique profile of abilities, illustrating just how individual, giftedness can be.
It's a reminder that we need to be flexible in how we identify and nurture talent.
Yeah, and meet those kids where they are. What talents and abilities did you show as a young child?
I was always drawn to the arts, particularly music and drawing. I loved expressing myself creatively and exploring different art forms.
Yeah.
Luckily, I had parents who encouraged that and provided me with opportunities to nurture those interests.
It's those early experiences of being supported and encouraged that can make all the difference.
They really can shape a child's trajectory.
Yeah. Now, shifting to another important aspect of education, let's talk about cultural and linguistic diversity. This is such a crucial topic.
Especially in today's world.
It is, especially in today's increasingly interconnected world. And the handbook delves into those challenges and opportunities that come with educating minority students in those diverse classrooms.
It's about creating a learning environment that values and respects all students' backgrounds and experiences.
Yeah, and it really emphasizes that importance of developing both home languages and cultural identity,
Right.
alongside that majority language and culture.
It's about finding that balance between honoring heritage and embracing the dominant culture.
And the handbook is actually pretty critical of those superficial or token expressions of cultural diversity that we sometimes see,
Right.
in schools. It's not enough to just celebrate different holidays.
No, it's about going deeper than that.
Or showcase, different cultures in a superficial way.
It's about creating a truly inclusive environment where students feel seen and heard and valued for who they are.
Yeah, and so how can we create those more inclusive and supportive learning environments, that genuinely honor that cultural and linguistic diversity of all students?
It's about moving beyond that one-size-fits-all model and recognizing that students come to the classroom with different backgrounds, experiences, and learning styles.
It's about meeting those students where they are.
Exactly. And providing them with the support they need to succeed.
And creating that space where all students feel this sense of belonging.
Right.
And they can...
It's about creating that sense of belonging, and they can, celebrate their cultural heritage while also learning and growing alongside their peers.
Absolutely. And that leads to, that question of balancing the preservation of heritage languages with the acquisition of, the dominant language.
Right.
It's a complex issue.
It is.
With no easy answers. What are your thoughts on this?
I think ideally we should strive to create learning environments that support the development of both. Preserving those heritage languages is so important for maintaining that cultural identity and connection. But at the same time, acquiring the dominant language is often essential for success,
And in the broader society.
Exactly. It's about finding ways to value and support both. Recognizing that bilingualism is an asset.
It is.
Not a deficit.
Yeah. Speaking of recognizing those individual differences,
Yes.
I was particularly fascinated by this section on temperament.
Oh, temperament. That's a fascinating area.
It is. It's such a fundamental aspect of, who we are. And the handbook highlights how it can influence children's social and emotional adjustment, especially in those early childhood settings.
It plays a big role in how children interact with the world around them.
Yeah, and research has shown that certain temperament characteristics, like, being slow to warm up to new situations or having a low threshold for stimulation,
Right.
they can make it harder for children to adjust to those group environments and navigate those early social interactions.
Yeah, they might need a little more time and support.
Yeah, and it's not that these children are, inherently difficult.
Right.
It's just that their temperament might require, different approaches and support
Absolutely.
to help them thrive in those settings.
It's about meeting their individual needs.
Exactly. And the handbook shares a study that examined the relationship between temperament and social behavior in preschool.
Oh, interesting.
And it found that, things like activity level, approach withdrawal tendencies,
Okay.
and sensory threshold
Yes.
all play a role in shaping how children interact with their peers.
So it's not just about personality.
Right.
It's about how those innate tendencies influence how we engage with the world.
It's fascinating to see how those, innate tendencies can have such a significant impact on our social experiences from a very young age.
Yeah. Those early patterns can really shape our social development.
Yeah. Think about, your own temperament or the temperament of children, How has temperament influenced those social interactions and experiences in group settings?
Well, I've definitely observed that some children are naturally more outgoing and adaptable,
Right.
while others need more time and support to feel comfortable in new situations. And it's about, recognizing and respecting those differences
Absolutely.
and creating environments that support all temperaments.
And creating those inclusive and supportive environments can make such a world of difference for children as they navigate, those early social experiences.
For sure. It sets the stage for positive social development.
Now, shifting our focus to the foundation of a child's educational journey, let's talk about the importance of those high-quality early childhood education programs,
Okay.
especially for those children with special needs.
Yeah. Early intervention is crucial.
It is. And the handbook stresses that, these programs can have such a profound impact on a child's development.
Absolutely. They lay the groundwork for future learning and success.
Yeah, and it emphasizes the need for a multidisciplinary approach in early childhood special education.
Right. It's not just about having specialized teachers. It's about creating a collaborative team of professionals from various fields all working together to meet the individual needs of each child.
It's like a team effort. And the handbook also discusses the evolution of early childhood special education, noting a shift from a focus on preventing school failure
Right.
to a more inclusive approach that embraces the diverse needs of young children.
It's a move away from that deficit-based model
Mm-hmm.
to one that focuses on strengths and possibilities.
I like that.
Yeah.
And there's also this growing recognition of the non-instructional roles of teachers,
Yes.
emphasizing, the importance of building relationships and creating that nurturing and supportive learning environment.
It's about seeing the whole child, not just focusing on academic skills.
Yeah, and there's a growing emphasis on the importance of early intervention, recognizing that those first few years are so critical for development.
Absolutely.
What are your thoughts on the essential qualities of a high-quality program, particularly for children with special needs? What makes a program truly exceptional?
For me, it's about creating an environment that's both nurturing and stimulating, where children feel safe, supported, and empowered to learn and grow at their own pace. It's about celebrating individual differences and providing each child with the tools and support they need to reach their full potential.
It's about creating that sense of belonging and empowering those young learners to, embrace their unique strengths.
Absolutely.
Now, let's turn our attention to a more challenging topic: behavior disorders in children and adolescents.
Okay.
This is an area where, having those effective interventions and support systems in place is absolutely critical.
We can make a world of difference.
And the handbook discusses recent advances in our understanding of these disorders, including, insights into how those maladaptive behavior patterns develop and are maintained.
It's complex interplay of factors.
It is. It's fascinating how much we're learning about the complex interplay of, biological, psychological, and environmental factors that contribute to these disorders.
Not just one thing.
It's not. It's not a simple issue, and it requires, that nuanced and multifaceted approach.
Absolutely.
And the handbook highlights the importance of using those empirically supported interventions.
Right.
Those that have been rigorously tested and shown to be effective.
Evidence-based practices are key.
And we're increasingly recognizing that crucial role of school-wide systems of support in preventing and managing those problem behaviors.
It's about shifting from a reactive approach to a more proactive one.
Right.
Focusing on prevention and early intervention.
Early identification is key.
Yes, absolutely.
We need to be able to recognize those warning signs.
Right.
And provide support before those behaviors escalate.
And creating a supportive environment where students feel safe to seek help.
Yeah, and we need to make sure that, those students who are struggling with behavior disorders, they feel supported and understood, not stigmatized or punished.
Absolutely. It's about creating a culture of compassion and understanding.
Yeah. So how can schools and communities better support, children and adolescents with behavior disorders?
It starts with creating a culture of understanding and support where mental health is given the same importance as physical health. We need to provide adequate resources for mental health services, train educators to recognize and respond to early warning signs, and create inclusive environments where all students feel safe and supported.
It's about breaking down those stigmas surrounding mental health.
Right.
And making sure that children and adolescents feel comfortable seeking help when they need it.
Absolutely. It's about normalizing help-seeking behavior.
What strategies can educators and families use to foster those positive and inclusive environments where all students, regardless of their challenges, feel valued and respected?
Open communication, empathy, and a willingness to work together are essential. It's about building relationships, fostering trust, and creating a sense of community where everyone feels a sense of belonging.
That sense of belonging can make all the difference
It really can.
in a student's life, helping them feel supported and empowered to overcome those challenges.
Absolutely. It's a protective factor.
Now, before we wrap up this deep dive into educational psychology, I want to take a moment to, reflect on the incredible breadth and depth of this field.
It's a vast and fascinating field.
It is. The Handbook of Psychology does an amazing job of capturing, that dynamic and evolving nature of educational psychology.
Right.
It's a field that has grown tremendously, in the last century. branching out into those diverse areas of inquiry and addressing such a wide range of learning contexts and settings.
It's a field that's constantly evolving and adapting to the changing landscape of education.
Yeah. It's inspiring to see how educational psychologists are tackling those complex issues.
Yes.
From, understanding the intricacies of how the brain learns
Uh-huh.
to designing those effective interventions for students with learning disabilities.
It's a field that's making a real difference in the lives of learners.
There's just so much groundbreaking work being done.
Uh,
And it's not just about, generating that theoretical knowledge. It's about
Yeah.
putting that knowledge into practice.
Exactly. It's about making a tangible impact on the lives of students.
Yeah, and making sure that those scientific findings,
Yes.
they translate into those real-world solutions that benefit students.
Bridging that research to practice gap.
Exactly. And the handbook calls for this more nuanced approach to research, moving beyond those traditional controlled experiments
Right.
and embracing those qualitative methods
Mhm.
that can, better capture the complexity of those real-world learning environments.
It's about getting a more holistic view of learning.
So it's about going beyond just the numbers
Yes.
and looking at those lived experiences of students and teachers.
To gain a deeper understanding of how learning really happens.
We need to move beyond those simple cause and effect models
Right.
and embrace that, messy, multifaceted nature of learning.
It's about recognizing that learning is influenced by a whole web of interconnected factors.
Absolutely. From, those individual differences and learning styles to those societal norms and cultural influences.
It's a complex ecosystem.
It is. And this shift in perspective is reflected in the handbook's emphasis on, understanding how those personal and sociocultural characteristics,
Right.
they interact with, those learning strategies and classroom conditions. It's not about finding that, one-size-fits-all solution.
Exactly.
It's about finding the best fit for each individual learner.
It's about personalized learning.
Yeah. The handbook also things like cooperative learning.
Yeah.
We need to make sure that those approaches are evidence-based
Absolutely.
and that we understand how they work for different learners.
Right.
Whether it's different age groups or students with varying abilities.
We need to understand those nuances.
And we need to delve deeper into those aptitude by treatment interactions, exploring how those individuals' strengths and weaknesses might influence the effectiveness of those different interventions.
It's about tailoring interventions to meet individual needs.
It is. It's about moving away from those one-size-fits-all solutions.
Right.
And embracing, that more tailored and personalized approach to education.
Absolutely.
Now, shifting gears a bit.
Okay.
The handbook also dives into the impact of, teacher characteristics and classroom management strategies on student outcomes.
That's a crucial area.
It is. The research is clear that teachers who are skilled at creating those positive and supportive learning environments,
Yeah.
they can have a huge impact on student motivation, engagement, and achievement.
They set the tone for the entire classroom.
Yeah, and those interpersonal relationships between students and teachers, they truly matter.
They're at the heart of effective teaching.
It's those teachers who can, build rapport, create a sense of belonging,
Right.
and foster those genuine connections that can make all the difference. They become mentors and role models for their students.
Yeah. They're not just teaching content.
Right.
They're creating this space where students feel safe to explore,
Yes.
to ask questions, and to learn from their mistakes.
They're fostering a growth mindset.
And they're cultivating those social, emotional skills and nurturing, those positive self-beliefs that are so essential for success in all aspects of life.
It's about educating the whole child.
It is. And let's not forget the, critical importance of creating those equitable learning environments
Absolutely.
where all students, regardless of their gender, cultural background, or learning style, feel valued and respected.
Equity is paramount.
It is. That's where educational psychology can really shine,
It can.
It can provide us with those tools and insights we need to break down those barriers
Yes.
and create, that more just and equitable educational system for all learners.
It's about creating a level playing field. Yeah. Based on all that we've explored today, what are some key areas where you believe educational research can make a real difference in improving the lives of children and adolescents?
It's about creating a feedback loop where research informs practice and practice in turn informs research. It's an ongoing cycle of improvement.
It's like a dance. between theory and practice,
Yeah.
constantly refining and adapting to the evolving needs of, students and educators.
And let's not forget the critical importance of advocating for policies that support those evidence-based practices.
Right.
Educational psychology can provide those data-driven insights
Mm.
to help shape those policies and create that systemic change.
It's about using research to inform decision-making at all levels, from the
that.
classroom to,
So the State House.
yeah, the State House. Now, I want to shift gears a bit
Okay.
and talk about a topic that's really close to my heart, the power of storytelling in education.
Oh, I love storytelling.
It's such a fundamental part of the human experience, right? It's how we make sense of the world. Right.
Connect with others.
Yeah.
Pass on knowledge.
It's how we learn and grow.
And the handbook, it doesn't explicitly address storytelling.
Okay.
But I think it's like this thread that runs through so many of the topics we've talked about today.
See that?
Yeah. Think about it. Like when we teach through storytelling,
Uh-huh.
we're tapping into those innate cognitive and emotional processes
Right.
that make learning more engaging and more memorable.
It brings learning to life.
It does. It's like those stories. They create this framework for understanding new information.
Mhm.
They provide context emotion, a sense of connection. That traditional textbook learning often lacks.
It makes learning more meaningful and relatable.
Exactly. And storytelling can be this powerful tool, for promoting empathy and understanding across cultures.
Oh, for sure.
When students hear stories from different perspectives,
Yes.
they begin to see the world through different eyes.
It broadens their horizons.
Yeah. It's like those stories become windows into other worlds.
Right. Helping us to, challenge our own assumptions and biases.
And to connect with others on a deeper level.
Yeah. And let's not forget the power of, personal storytelling.
Oh, yes. That's so important.
When teachers share their own stories,
Mhm.
they create this sense of vulnerability
Right.
and authenticity
It humanizes them.
that can resonate so deeply with students.
It makes them more relatable and approachable.
Yeah, it's like those stories humanize that learning process,
Yeah.
making those connections between the head and the heart.
Absolutely. It's about engaging the whole person.
So as you continue exploring, the world of educational psychology,
Yes.
I encourage you to think about the role of storytelling in learning. How can we incorporate, storytelling into our teaching, our parenting, even our own learning journeys?
That's a great challenge. It's about looking for those opportunities to weave narratives into our learning experiences, to make them more engaging, more meaningful, and more memorable.
I love that. Well, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into the fascinating world of educational psychology. I hope you found this journey as enlightening as I have.
It's been a pleasure exploring these ideas with you.
It really has. It's been this whirlwind tour,
Yeah.
of these key concepts, thought-provoking research, and practical insights that we can all, apply to our own lives.
And if any particular topic sparked your curiosity,
Right.
we encourage you to, dive deeper into those references cited in the Handbook of Psychology, Volume 7, Educational Psychology.
It's a treasure trove of information.
Absolutely. There's a wealth of knowledge waiting to be uncovered.
Happy exploring. And remember that journey of learning.
Yes.
It's a lifelong adventure. Thanks for joining us.